Change. The Astrotherapy Podcast. Interviews. Welcome to the Astrotherapy Podcast. This is the interviews series where I am speaking with the most incredible human beings that I know on the planet, those that I admire and I love, and deeply, deeply look forward to learning from their wisdom and sharing that with you. We are speaking on the themes of change, specifically on the theme of change, but there's so many themes within change that we want to touch on. Change in our life, perspectives, and through the spaces that inform our daily experience. Now, today I'm really happy to invite Reed Finlay here to speak with us. Reed is an architect. He's a creative visionary. He is a beating heart that is so gentle and so powerful. I feel so incredibly honored to have met Reed. We've actually met twice. We first met twice at a friend's dinner party, an intimate dinner party. When, back in COVID days, when that was a really special treat. Yeah, we were sitting outside and enjoying the Ojai evening, the magic of Ojai nights. And then I was introduced to Reed again at a mutual friend's wedding, and actually a few people were telling me that I must meet Reed and share with him a vision that had been kind of birthing in my heart around the creation of a sound temple that is very much alive in me to this day. And my greatest hope is that Reed and I get to collaborate on that. So who is Reed? Reed is a thinker who explores the intersection of time, space, and transformation. He lives in Ojai. He is an architect with over 25 years of experience in creating spaces that foster healing, connection, and a deeper relationship with the natural world. Some of you may know of Reed or have heard of him as the architect behind the sacred temple space at Burning Man 2 years ago. What an extraordinary feat. Reed, thank you for being here.
Thank you. What a nice introduction. So nice to see you, and I'm so honored to be able to have this conversation with you.
Likewise, Reed. We've been visiting. Actually, we're just 2 rooms apart from each other right now. We just we were working with set and setting, which is something that when I first met you, we were both kind of drawn into a specific work with sound, and that sound has been I'd say a through line for both of us in our own personal transformation, our own growth, and as a channel of inviting, a knowing of who we are becoming. Both of us kind of share that together. Before we jump into that, River, could you share a word or two on what comes up for you when you hear the word change, or as we're speaking about change? What does that feel like?
It has the dual tone of both feeling. It makes me nervous right away, and I also immediately remind myself that all the great things in my life have come out of change. Have come out of either change being forced upon me or me making decisions to change. Most often me making decisions to change when I didn't want to. And so it has this real duality to it for me of like, it feels real. I feel very like my essence, my default setting is to find sort of quiet and safety. And that is sort of inherently not a seeking of change, but I know that my evolution is through change, not through comfort.
And you speak to the decisions to change when you didn't really want to. Can you say more about that?
Yeah. Well, I've always just been someone that was looking for, I'm sort of a moderator. I like to bring about peace in people. I like for people to be getting along. I like for conflict to be resolved. I like to speak through it. I like to and I think I'm adept at at helping that be true, helping calm and stabilize energies and situations. Um, uh, so it's like that's easier for me than change. Um, but it is the great lesson of others that have come into my life that show me that that's not the only goal. And in fact, it's only half of the journey is to try to find and enjoy peace and enjoy now. There's also um, the desire and the ping to change and evolve and move forward. You know, sometimes the search for peace or calm can feel um, still, but it can feel both in a good and a bad way. Still in a peaceful way, but also still in a not moving way and not moving forward way. And so I feel sort of constantly in a battle between the search for peace and the search for evolution.
Wow, I could sit with that one for a while. I I'm I'm really I'm really being with that read that hit it really struck something a chord in me because I'm one of those people that is pretty insatiable around change and transformation. It's I never thought of myself that way, but it's who I've known or I've come to know myself to be. I love to transform. I love the metamorphosis. I love what you're speaking to as like evolution. And at the same time, I feel like peace um, is a portal. You know, there's something really um, important about not looking over that and not just continuing to grow and evolve and to be on the move, but to be able to dial in to that place of peace throughout the entire process, to where that place of peace becomes a consistent part of the journey, and maybe even living in that center of peace while inside of the metamorphosis, no matter what stage one is in, right? I'm in liquefaction right now. I don't even know who I'm becoming, but I'm still peaceful.
Yeah.
Um, can I be peaceful when I'm deconstructing? Can I be peaceful when I'm reconstructing?
Mm,
I really
mm,
love that
mm.
consideration.
Yeah, I love that idea of that these are not mutually exclusive and that they can live at the same time. Yeah. I have a window through that, through my perfect partner of a wife who is very action oriented and very change, and she there's a discomfort in staying still for too long. Like she wants the world to change and evolve and be more just and be more peaceful and be more everything. And in that action, she also has she is like has peace in action. Like that's where what fuels her. That's what charges her. Whereas like for me, my fueling is more in quiet. And but I aspire to that also. I aspire to having both of those present at the same time. Yeah. Because I think the goal is the ultimate goal is stillness and peace, but you have to change to get there. You know?
Yeah, yeah, you were sharing with me last night about how she's like the ready, aim, fire, and you're the ready, aim, aim, aim,
Yes.
fire type. And I can so relate with you. I've been working with this in my own partnership where he's he's fire as he was sharing also with you. He's a fire, and I am also very drawn to fire, like a moth to the flame. Um, but I also like to assess and orient and, make decisions after having as many options, really exploring what the options are and gathering the information and then being able to make the best decision. But he's just ready to go. He'll like feel it and then go for it. So Um, it's been it's been a journey. It is a journey. It's always a journey. But
Yeah.
when two people come together with a different pacing almost, right? It's a
Mhm.
different rhythm and I don't know, I'm kind of like, okay, we're the rhythm section and your rhythm is like this and my rhythm is like this and there's a complement, you
Yeah.
know? Um, but it doesn't mean that I have to gravitate towards his rhythm or he has to gravitate towards mine. Um, I'm
Mm,
wondering how you and
mm.
your wife are finding that as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of that of the as we deepen our relationship, um, there's a heightened awareness and acceptance at the same time of and appreciation for that difference in speed. And I think I aspire to be more like her, and she aspires to be more like me in a lot of ways. So I think we are pulling each other in each other's direction, um, because if those are polarities, if the peace and the action are sort of in the movement and the stillness are sort of in opposition to each other, ideally we can have them all at the same time. So I think that in our relationship, yeah, that is one of the great evolutions of our relationship, is that we are seeing that in each other and appreciating that in each other, and actually wanting it in ourselves more, as opposed to wanting them to be more like us, actually wanting ourselves to be more like them.
What is one of the biggest changes you've experienced in yourself since getting married?
Oh, since getting married, that's a really good question. I want to sit with that for a second. A lot has changed because we had a child. Not specifically the marriage, but it is the building of this family.
Mm,
Uh, one of the things that's changed a lot, there are so many things. The first thing that sort of comes to mind is my relationship to my purpose
mm,
has really changed since coming into relationship and into a family unit, a three family unit, in that it was sort of simpler when it was just me, in terms of like there's like a there's it was heavy into professional goals. Professional goals were sort of that was how I could measure myself. And it was very clear. There are very clear ways of measuring yourself there. Um, and you can do that financially. You can do that in terms of the position that you have at a company. Or what kind of apartment you have, or there's like it's very clear sort of masculine measurability to that way of defining your purpose. And when I came into relationship and then further into family, um, that is completely has completely changed. I mean, I have a very clear and big purpose professionally, but I also just as big of a purpose to be present for my son, to read a book to him at night, to um, be there when he wants to play or explain something to him that he doesn't understand, you know, or just as important to be there to support my wife in anything she's working through professionally, emotionally, um, and that is those are very immeasurable, and they don't have the same feedback necessarily, and not the clarity of feedback, um, because they're on a more emotional, human, interactional level, than monetary or measurable level. So there's been a lot of like internal change of what is a good day? What is like a productive day? It used to be really easy. It's like today it was productive. I got X, Y, and Z done. And um and now it's the end of the day is more about stories, of things that happened, conversations that I had with my kid, and um, you know, sharings with my wife, and whether the house is clean, and like like nesting things, and like full life things. Are we creating a full life around us?
mm,
Uh, that is now a much deeper, um, sense of purpose. And that really changed from when it was just me.
Hmm. Reed, what got you into architecture? What was the allure for you?
Oh, well, um, I was just a drawer as a kid. I never thought of it as anything that I was going to go into professionally, but I love drawing. And when I was, alone, um, in my room, I like to spend a lot of time alone, and I would often be drawing or creating little worlds. Or I was really into sports. I would like design golf courses and imagine myself playing on them, and sports stadiums, um, and I eventually went to college for it, but did a detour because I was mostly interested in becoming very interested in psychology and consciousness and dreaming, and actually ended up with an undergrad in those studies, um, which ultimately came back in is embedded in my work now. But um, I finished that work and felt this sort of like pang of really missing the creative process, really missing the making, making things, doing things with my hands. I think I needed to get out of my head and into my body a little bit more. And drawing and making things felt like that. It felt like play, you know,
Mhm.
and 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 I followed that and decided to go back to school for it. Went to grad school and was fully embedded in architecture. Um, but yeah, it was something that was really in me, and I think I was a real shy kid, real introverted kid. Like I said, I spent a lot of time alone. I think it was really a way for me um, to play with my imagination, because I wasn't doing it as much out because I had such an internal, I felt like I had such an internal life that it was like the way that I could sort of play with the world through this creation of these ideas. Um, and and ultimately I didn't think I was going to go into it, but um, once I um, once I had that ping to go back towards it, I honestly I had some people that like recognized my abilities, and I think it's such an like it's like something I want for my son all the time. I want for everybody all the time to just have someone notice what they're good
Mhm.
at and reflect it back to them. You know,
Mhm.
I think it's the biggest gift in the world. And I had a couple people when I first started psychology. I had a couple people who were like, "You think like a psychologist," and I think like you've got something here, kid. And I had that with architecture too, and I had an uncle that was a really wonderful architect who also saw that potential in me and brought me under his wing. And I'm really grateful for and want to be that for other people as much as possible too, because I think we all hopefully can see our own gifts, but when it's reflected back to us, it's really confirmed, you know.
Mhm.
And so that when it was confirmed, that's when I really became became this.
I'm wondering if you could speak to the evolution of your definition of what architecture is, how you've experienced that, from the beginning to where you are now, and also how you've merged your background in psychology and architecture.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I've done a lot. I've worked for a number of different firms. I've worked for big startups. I've worked for big companies, and I now work for myself. So it's what I've worked on has evolved a lot, but the sort of spirit. I was thinking about this the other day. I really think that like in my 20s and maybe early 30s, I was really charged up about what could be important about architecture. I saw like just from my own lens, I saw a lot of like um, sort of theoretical, esoteric language around what design is in sort of an avant-garde way that didn't really land with me because I saw the world that like a world that needed to be healed, and like a planet that was being devastated, and like and feeling like I was just searching for what architecture should be, like what our role was, what was important about architecture. Um, and that led me to the environmental, like sort of the environmental wave of the 2000s. And so my sort of early stage was all around sustainability um, and making buildings as environmentally responsible as possible. Sort of early LEED and other programs I was following, um, and there's sort of this like this. I had like an energy of like almost an angsty energy of like we got like we're fucking things up and we've got to do something about it, and why are we not talking about this more? Um, and so the answers were really in the sort of material, specifically in the material of like the planet is we are using too many resources. We are doing this irresponsibly. We're poisoning the air and the water, and buildings are half of the responsibility of this problem.
Mm.
And and it was um, a very like interesting kind of sort of parallel to what I talked about before. This like measurable problem that it was
Mm.
like we can build buildings better in a very measurable way so that we are not polluting and devastating the planet the way we have been. Um, and that was what I believed architecture was meant to do, at least for me, was to work on that problem. Um, and I still believe that's true. But what has sort of changed, talk about a big change, is that I have moved towards a feeling that buildings also have a very have potential and a responsibility to be healing for us also. And that sort of extends from the environmental movement to sort of like health of the body, which there's a lot of work that's done in terms of like indoor air quality and pollutants in the home. So there is this sort of physiological side of it, but what I've really been working on lately is the sort of emotional attunement, and what spaces can do to support, particularly work of healing. Um, and so I specifically got into that interest when I um, was reintroduced to psychedelics through ceremony, and remembered the power of that work and the potential of that healing. And I did it in a place that was a very subpar location, a beautiful, blissful experience, but with chipping paint and a loud air conditioner and a space that was certainly not intended for this use case of
Mhm.
holding ceremony for people that are going into depths to heal themselves. And I just saw uh, an opening and a calling explore that, to explore the way that spaces can be designed to be there to hold that space, and in any way possible to elevate um, those types of experiences. I've like been noticing this sort of change from this like measurable to a little more immeasurable. There's actually a lot of science around um, how spaces influence cognitive behavior and stress and anxiety and cortisol levels and hormones. There is a lot of science behind it, but it is also it's also very soft science at the same time, or transcendent science at the same time, where it has an emotional element to it, where there are some spaces that just feel better than others, and what is it that makes that true? That's sort of the exploration that I'm on.
So when you were in that ceremonial space, you felt an opening, you felt a calling. Um, how has your life changed since that moment? Have you reoriented your practice to
Yeah,
um, everything?
everything
Okay.
changed. Everything changed. Yeah, like quite literally everything changed. My I was working for a company doing architectural and product design, which was wonderful and was very in line with my skills at the time. I had only been working for other people up until that point. Um, that opened up just that ping opened up this very. I've never I rarely feel this kind of pull or flow, especially professionally. It was something that I saw that vision, and it's one of those things that just wouldn't go away. And I pushed it off. I pushed off, and talk about the resistance to change. I pushed this off for probably a year and a half, and it just kept nagging at me. It didn't go away, and and um and it was annoying sometimes because I had a nice job, and 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 had a nice life, and this was just it was a feeling I had to at some point address. And so once I did, everything unfolded. And at the same time, subsequently, I had been single at the time, and that same experience led me to make change, literally physically. I had this vision of moving my home, of leaving the home that I was in, which felt misaligned. Again, nice, rent controlled, like comfortable, great
Wow.
place to have been. um, and perfectly suitable and not right. And that we were talking about this a little earlier, but I feel like those are the changes that are actually sometimes the hardest, because they're like everything's okay, but it also means you're not opening up space for something greater. And this has been true for me in relationships, and it's been true with homes that I've lived in and jobs that I've had, that at some point you just have that feeling like it's probably time to move on. It maybe doesn't logically make sense. Like, to pay a lot more rent doesn't logically make sense, but um, but if I moved apartments, I had this vision of having a place where I could bring people, and and it was driven by community, and that's not something you can measure by a rental amount. So it
Mhm.
was a difficult decision to make. But the first time I had a dinner party is when I met my wife, and it both opened up my social life, because there's something very healing actually about opening my social life, um and that shy kid that I was now having people over. That was a very foreign thing for me as a kid, to be the host of others. And so I think that was one of the driving forces. And through that energy is when I met my wife, when we first got together. Um, um, and so this is like very direct. I see that as just a very direct sign from the universe that you have to listen to these pings of change when especially when they feel uncomfortable or inconvenient. This is and especially when you don't know what's on the other side. That's what can be the hardest thing about change, is you can't see what this alternative life looks like. You can see what this one is that you're living right now, and but it's really hard to see what the alternative is going to be. Um, but so if you can hear it and listen to the best of your ability, I've done it well. Sometimes I've done it terribly, a lot of times. But the times that I have felt like I have really gone with that voice that is telling me to change, despite all the evidence, or despite all um, the comforts, it has always led me to a better place.
And now professionally, you are entirely focused upon temples. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, temples, and well, so the sort of center of what I do, that inspires my thinking uh, is around the world of psychedelics, and particularly in creating spaces for the psychedelic experience, um, temples, ceremony spaces, clinics a little bit now. But really, I'm sort of using that vessel as a way of exploring the relationship of the mind and space, and how spaces can be of support to the healing process. So just as much on the table would be hospitals. I'm working on some wellness centers, prisons, anywhere that is meant to be a place for rehabilitation, for healing, for transformation, is all on the table. And it's an ongoing research effort to try to understand what role space has in this. And in many ways, space is just a small piece of the puzzle. In all cases, it's a small piece of the puzzle. I would not argue that these spaces make the experience. In fact, I don't think that should be the goal of any of these spaces to make or use a blunt tool to give you an experience, but instead to first of all hold a safe place where you can feel more comfortable going deeper, because of the place that you're in, and then once that foundation is built, hopefully having an aspirational sense as well, that may be able to elevate these experiences in some way. But I'm really careful in not using language that is to say, like, these buildings make somebody feel a certain way. It
Hmm.
may happen, and often does happen, but I don't always know how it happens, and I want to be really careful to not believe that I am making it happen.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I had a small taste of the architecture world when I was hired as a studio director of an architecture and design firm in New York City. And it was such a delight to get into that world, and really to experience like the long game of architecture and the patience inside of creating worlds and seeing how, yeah, architects, you are the builders of our society and
Yeah,
how we interact with each other and how we live and how we work. And I mean, the structures really do inform our experience in so many ways, from the seen and the unseen.
yeah,
So first of all, I just really admire your line of work, Reed. I really admire your craft, and it is so inspiring to me how you're meeting your craft, how you're evolving within it, and how you're exploring what's possible, because we are in such a powerful time. And, it's always a powerful time to be alive, to be a human. And, change is rapid. And, we're seeing this in so many spheres, whether it's political, environmental. I'm curious how, as an architect, you're meeting this moment. I mean, it sounds like you're meeting it through inner work, through psychology, through transformation. What are you seeing that's happening from that bigger kind of objective perspective?
yeah, yeah. That's the goal right now, is aiming at the inner work. Again, it was sort of clearer when it was outer, and um, and that is those principles still hold true for all the projects that I do. I mean, they have to have environmental responsibility involved in them. We can't build any build. We know too much now to build buildings that are tearing this environment apart. We just know too much. The technology is all there, and um, the, the affordability is all there in theory. Um, um, but yeah, this is working on making sure that spaces uh, are holding us in a way um, that are helping us flourish instead of languish. I actually think that our buildings are really, really fundamentally underserving us, and that the and we take for granted the importance of the spaces that we are inhabiting. like I was just at a psychedelics conference in Denver, and it was incredible, and the spirit was amazing, and it was at its core about healing the world. This is what the entire psychedelics movement is about, is using these technologies, these medicines to heal. And and I couldn't help but notice that we were in the convention center in Denver, which is just like the most soulless place, built for, no purpose and every purpose at the same time. And, um, just pumping so much air conditioning in to where it was just freezing in the summertime. And I had to take breaks to go outside because the air quality was so bad in the place. And I think that there is just a role in us having better awareness of what our spaces are doing for us or against us. And I think there's just so much science um, around air quality and biophilia and um, color theory and all these things that have proven out that like there is the ability to rehabilitate or your tendency to feel anger or frustration or aggravation is directly affected by the kind of spaces, even just the color of a room that you're inhabiting. And um, so I think that what I'm trying to do is help uncover that and to help people understand in a clearer way how much spaces affect our emotional well-being and our mental health. And um, so that's by building some of these spaces, by researching myself and understanding this more, and by educating as much as I can. Um, because it's very real. And I really envision a world in which we are more aware of the health of the spaces that we inhabit, in a way that we're more aware now of the kind of food that we eat because of food labeling, because of research, because of podcasts, because of all the information out there about what food does to our body. Um, I think spaces are the same and um, are behind in terms of the progress of um, people having awareness of what spaces do for them or how they work against them.
You're speaking of temple spaces, you're speaking of wellness centers, you mentioned prisons, and I'm
Uh,
curious about prison design and where that's coming into the conversation right now, and I'm so glad that it is.
right.
Do you see or experience a lot of hope in the midst of all the chaos that we're in, that there's such a focus and possibility, and that there are temples being constructed and that there are resources being poured into creating sacred spaces for inner work?
I have hope that there's more interest in it now. Um, the like I, I also recognize that, temples are like or modern, let's say modern temples or ceremonial spaces um, are are incubators of healing. They're places that are, um, I would think at their best would serve the sort of limited population that is able to inhabit them, but then the rippling effect is really strong of what these people have seen and what they've done. I mean, I've seen it in facilitation of psychedelic ceremonies, just in watching like friends of mine and all the different directions that they have gone, and the advocacy that they have embodied, and the way that they have brought the spirit into their own work, have changed their lens from, being in the banking world to now running retreats to help others. So there's you can only sort of serve so many people with one ceremonial space. Um, and that actually is the biggest challenge in my mind right now of this work, is like, are we doing enough? Is this actually enough? And how can we do more? You know?
Hmm.
So I think at its best, I think of them as like incubators of change. that it's not just about the, say, 20 people that sit in a ceremony, but it's who those 20 people now go, speak to and touch, and the tendrils move out. But I am concerned about that not having enough impact. So right now I'm starting to get interested in the psychedelic clinic space, which there's a lot of movement coming in right, hopefully, um, you know, uh, declassifying and descheduling psychedelics in certain places to pair with psychotherapy to create a lot of support for those with mental illness. I mean, the evidence is just absolutely staggering in terms of the ability, and they're not a panacea. They need to be paired with psychotherapy, but the ability of these medicines to heal people with really deep levels of anxiety and depression and PTSD, and especially in soldiers, it's just absolutely remarkable. And there's a really deep bipartisan push for some of these medicines too, because soldiers are coming back and are in really deep holes that these medicines seem to have a really amazing way of helping pull them out of. And like, for example, Rick Perry, the Republican governor of Texas, that is, ultra conservative, is now the evangelist for ibogaine, um,
Wow.
for the legalization and proliferation of ibogaine specifically for veterans. Um, and um, there is something really powerful about this. Again, it's not the whole answer, but there are a lot of people that can be served by this. And what my interest is when I think about like a larger impact, the ability to create spaces for this clinical work. Because what's happening is that a lot of this clinical work is happening in a very research-based setting or a medical setting. Like, imagine doing a psychedelic retreat in a hospital, and all the beeping and poking and walking down hallways with, seeing other doctors and going to the bathroom, and like this kind of medicine is not. These spaces are not suitable for this kind of medicine. And so when I'm thinking forward on where space is going to be really needed to serve, that's a place I'm really looking at, is like that these clinics and these, and even if they're in a hospital, like having some guidelines and some assistance for people that are designing these spaces to understand the effect that space can have on these experiences. It's that to me is feeling like a worthy venture, because it now starts to serve a lot of people that are in need, and that are not just those that either have gotten the calling or have the resources to go to a retreat in a remote, beautiful location. Um, it's about veterans, and it's about people with real mental ailments that need support, and I can already see a world built around them where this work is not being supported by the space.
Mm. For those who are listening to our podcast, who are at home and may not have the opportunity also to go to a retreat, a psychedelic retreat somewhere, but do have the opportunity to make some basic changes in their home environment, like what are some of the key characteristics or considerations that you take when wanting to create a space that's more conducive for healing?
I mean, the first principle that I really always work through is safety, is a feeling of safety, and to say that is muted colors and soft pillows would be sort of a safe answer, but it's not. It's very individualized. I'd say it's whatever instills a feeling of safety to you, because it's there's this psychologist Donald Winnicott that I reference sometimes that um, created this concept called the holding environment, and it relates to how the mother holds a space for the child, but it sort of there's a relationship to space where this is also true, like in a psychologist office, that they when they design their space, they know to create as safe an environment as possible because that safety is what allows us to go deeper and to work on harder problems and to go to and to see our shadow and go there in a way that feels like we're supported. Whereas if you're in a place where you can hear beeping cars or there are triggers that whatever your individual triggers are, can immediately pull you out of that depth. And so psychologists know this really well. And I believe this to be a really powerful concept to use for any of us that are trying to create spaces for any sort of healing we're doing for ourselves. If it's meditation or yoga or anything else, Tai Chi, Qigong, anything, to make sure you are doing it in a space that instills a feeling of safety in yourself. Because if it's an emotional practice, you'll benefit from that. I guess it gets to this feeling of change, this idea of change. Like change is uncomfortable, but there are ways to make it feel more comfortable. I think going into your depths and looking at how you need to change or how you can change is a hard road, but it can be paved in a smoother way. So that's really what I think about with space. And so instead of saying that there's any sort of particular implementation of that would work for everybody, I would just say, settle and feel into what your own feeling of safety is, what makes you feel safe, what kind of spaces make you feel safe. And it might be wild patterns because that's how you connected to safety as a kid. Who knows? But I'd say just to first tap into whatever that feeling of safety is, and then build that environment around yourself.
Yeah, thank you. That's definitely a really important consideration. I don't think it's something I think of very often around my home. I mean, I'm fortunate to feel safe in my home. Um, but I love design. I love interior design. I love muted colors. I love soft
Good.
pillows. So I'm obviously gravitating towards that, how the external environment can help, soothe when the inner environment is feeling a little bit disrupted. So, Reed, how can people find you? Like what you're up to? How can people explore more about what's going on in your world?
Sure. Yeah. You can visit my website, which is reedfinleydesign.com. That's the sort of all-encompassing. You can see sort of some of the history of design that I've done that is outside of this space. Um, and I also have a design effort called Set and Setting, which is really where the research um, piece of this is happening, and where sort of the clearer temple work is happening as well. You can find most of that work on my website, but also setsetting.com is a narrower look into this particular exploration of the relationship between the mind and space.
Amazing. Any last words of wisdom from you today, Reed?
Oh no, this is so wonderful to be in this energy with you. And um, yeah, I feel so like soft um, and held and comforted by your questions and how you're asking them, and just your spirit and your energy. And I love that you're doing this, and I love you're doing this with this energy as a baseline. And I'm so excited to now listen to everybody else's podcasts with you and hear what came out for them, because this felt really different for me. So I really thank you for it.
Thank you so much, Reed. Thanks for being a guest with us today. And I look forward to potentially listening to your future podcast, if that comes to be. But I feel a strong desire to learn more from you, to hear more of your experience, your worldview, your perspective, um, how your journey as an architect and with this new kind of emergence of both your architecture background and this inclination, this natural tendency to dive deep into the mind, into the psychology of what it means to be human, and to find ways to bring that into the world as a means of healing. It feels so timely. It is so timely. The time is now. Now is the time. And yeah, I feel like we can all use more of your voice in the world. So I encourage you to share more of yourself. Thank you so
Thank
much, Reed.
thank you so much.
Yeah,
Appreciate
yeah,
you. Thank you.
you too.